Hey, this video is going to be a little different because I'm talking about a podcast, the Two Princes podcast, which is a narrative-based podcast from Gimlet. It was created and written by Kevin Christopher Snipes and directed by Mimi O'Donnell. There are 7 episodes in the first season, and each is about 20 minutes long. It's going to be a little different because I don't have pictures to put up like I would normally with the comic. So I've drawn a couple pieces of fan art for this series because I am a fan of the series. So I'm going to be using clips of that and then character art or whatever art I can scrounge up that I think works, or clips or whatever. But the speed paint that you see is me but this art is old unless I drew something new for this video, which I doubt I'll do because I'm pretty lazy. Anyway, let's get into talking about the Two Princes. I first started this podcast in 2019 when I was in college and desperately needed something sweet and escapist from my piles of homework. I am probably going to bring this up later as well, but I want to mention now that I am not at all the demographic for this podcast. I want to say that it's probably intended for early middle schoolers, if not younger, but I used it for background noise when I was doing schoolwork and found the story entertaining and memorable enough that I ended up listening to the whole thing, really enjoyed it, and thought it was worth making a video about. There are 3 seasons of the podcast, but I am specifically going to be talking about season 1. The Two Princes tells the story of Rupert and Emir, 2 princes, obviously, from warring nations divided by a literal dark forest of evil magic. The forest has been growing since the boys were young, reaching further and further into their 2 nations and causing upheaval and unrest within their kingdoms. The boys were raised by their mothers since their fathers were presumed dead during the war. The 2 queens have done their best to sustain their countries and raise their sons, both in completely opposite ways. Amir's mother, Queen Atusa, has been focused on regimen and intelligence, and she's similarly raised her son to be fit both physically and mentally. She's shown to be confident and a warm person, particularly in regards to her son.
You think that is nothing? It seems you do not know what is worthy of honor.
We don't learn a ton about the Kingdom of the East in any of the seasons, honestly. We do learn that they're very technologically advanced, though. She believes in compromise between the 2 kingdoms over carnage and war. Rupert's mother, Queen Lavinia, has prioritized frivolity and keeping both her son and people happy. She's also worked to squander any interest that Rupert has in greater adventure, wanting to protect him.
You want to go outside? Why, Rapunzel?
As a character, she seems driven by the fairy tale goals of happily ever after, and has tried to keep others around her content, even in grim situations.
That's the best thing a girl in this world can be. A beautiful little fool.
We see early on that this desire comes from a fear of unrest, and ultimately both queens are afraid of losing their sons to the curse of the forest. Lavinia's kingdom, the Kingdom of the West, seems more traditional in nature. It's more like a basic fantasy city, with Queen Atusa describing it as a backwards little kingdom. Rupert and Emir are both similar and different from their mothers. Emir has got the whole dashing knight character, well practiced and maneuvered, but can also be a bit too driven by emotion and a sense of right and wrong.
I forbid you to take another step down these stairs!
Okay.
He's almost cartoonishly prince-ish at times. In a D&D campaign, I might roll for insight just to see if it's a facade, but this show isn't that complicated, and it's pretty clear Emir is just conducting himself in that way. Rupert, meanwhile, does lie a lot, particularly about who he is to Emir early on in the series, and generally he does it pretty badly.
Why are you on the run?
That is a great question. I am on the run because I'm a thief.
A thief?
Yeah. I'm a thief. I mean, how do you think I got that sword? I mean, not to brag, but I'm basically the greatest thief in all the West.
Great. Just what I need. A vagabond with no concept of honor. Oh well, the forest can deal with you.
Wait, What?
Although this is at least partially probably for the benefit of the listener, because this is intended for a younger audience, so it makes sense that everything's over the top. As the story continues, we're introduced to a number of other characters. Those worth mentioning in season 1 are Joan, a stable girl who works throughout the podcast to show her mastery of skills and that she's worthy of being a knight. Lady Cicely, who is kind of like a parody of a Valley Girl in personality, but is treated as a genuinely nice person. These girls in particular were interesting to me in the way that they sort of mirror the two queens, but I don't think they ever directly address that at all in the podcast. You also meet Lord Chamberlain, who works for and advises Rupert's mother, and Porridge, a small little dragon that Rupert and Amir adopt within the series. We follow Amir and Rupert as they make their way into the woods, driven by a quest and sense of adventure. Rupert is dismissive of his mother's wishes and seems to idolize his late father, but clearly shares her sense of stress and dread, regardless of how debonair he may try to seem. He craves a sense of autonomy and adventure, while also literally and metaphorically escaping his mother's mission of marrying him off before his 18th birthday. Amir wants to complete a predestined curse from before the boys were born, and thinks it will be the best way to live up to his mother's devotion in training and preparing him to lead his kingdom. Both princes eventually meet in the woods. Rupert lies to keep his identity away from Amir throughout most of the story, and the two subsequently fall in love while dealing with the curse and the monsters of the forest. Big spoiler for the end of season 1, but the curse is that the boys would fight in the woods to the death, and the winner's father would become king of the two kingdoms. Obviously, the answer to this is that the boys getting together is how they evade the curse or fix it in Fairytale way. With that in mind, The Two Princes is ultimately a star-crossed lovers story with hints of Romeo and Juliet in its first season. If you're a fan of tropes, there's also some vibes of one fell hard but the other fell harder.
You do swim, do you not?
Oh, I swim pretty girl. Pretty good.
Outside of tropes, the themes within the show focus pretty heavily on messages of compromise, found family, and girl power. Mileage will vary with the latter because it does get a little heavy-handed with the message of girl power at some moments. I liked it, you may not. This is also from 2019, so I feel like that's just how strong female representation was written at the time, a lot of the time. But it's pretty central around the queens and the literal army of princesses that they lead in the first season. When we're not with Amir and Rupert, we follow their moms as they bring together the women of the Kingdom of the West in order to try saving their sons. This is also when characters like Joan are given a chance to shine within the podcast. The subsequent seasons continue to find fantastical reasons to keep the boys apart. This allows for a lot of character exploration and both campy and cringy moments throughout. This is assuredly just because I'm an adult listening to a podcast for kids, but I found myself literally rolling my eyes at moments with just how cheesy this show could get. This isn't really a critique since I tend to enjoy silly stories, but it's just something to keep in mind. The Two Princes is also another LGBTQ story where the characters don't face negative persecution for being gay, at least not in the first season. They do address elements of homophobia later within the series, but neither Amir or Rupert are pulled apart by their mothers or other people close to them because of their relationship. Earlier I mentioned D&D, which if you didn't know, I try to play in my free time. I do think this show has a similar feeling to listening to like an actual play on YouTube or Spotify though. Like there are plenty of moments that really had me kind of picturing them trying to pass like a charisma check or failing like a dexterity saving throw or something. I think this adds to like the level of fun for me, and if you listen to actual plays and you want to give your kids a similar experience without it being like kind of an unexpected content rating, this might be a good substitute until you think that they would want to get into actual plays, I guess. Kind of random, just a thought. Overall, the story of The Two Princes is really fun. It's a well voice acted and executed podcast. The sound design and editing are also extremely well done and work great with the storytelling and pacing. Each character is distinct, and I really enjoyed the chemistry between the main actors. As As we follow the boys throughout the story, we get a good sense of who they are, and the relationship that they develop feels both believable and fast enough that you aren't surprised by anything that happens throughout the Two Princes tale. If I had a negative, I would just again mention that the writing can be a tad dated, and at moments it does get a little too corny, but if you're a fan of funny, silly moments and don't take it too seriously, I think it can be really entertaining. Again, don't take it too seriously because this isn't Game of Thrones, this is a podcast for children on YouTube and Spotify. I feel like I should also mention that the third season is a musical. I don't know where else to mention this, but I feel like I should warn you so you aren't surprised when you start listening and they're singing. I think it mentions it at the end of season 2 as well, but you know, just an additional heads up. And yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about the Two Princes. I wasn't really sure how in-depth to go with behind the scenes for this podcast. Back when the third season first came out, it was mentioned that the series would be getting an animated movie or series, but I wasn't able to find much information on it when researching for this video about like where it is in production or if it's even still happening. I hope it is. I feel like this would be a really cute movie or something. Anyways, if you managed to sit through this, thank you. Sorry it's a little different than usual. I wanted to make a video about this because I like it, and yeah, I don't know if there is a usual for my channel, actually. I don't know if there'll ever be. I did post that poll on the community tab, and it looks like Bingo Love was the winner, so thanks to everyone that answered that poll, and I'll try to have that video up soon. There are a few other comics that I want to talk about, just like on my short list, so yeah, we'll see how consistently I post things whenever I get the chance to post them. Anyways, thanks YouTube. Have a good night.